Hi, this is Renee Hobbs. It's Thursday, April 25th, 2018. This is the last class of EDC 534, Digital Authorship, part of the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy at the University of Rhode Island. I'm here today with, I see Denise checking in. I see Pat Johnson checking in. I see Cornelia. Hi, Cornelia. I see Barbara. Let me see, who else do I see? I see Matt. I see Sherry. I see Jamie Green. I see Angie Hartley. And who else do I see? Did I miss anybody? Okay, I'm really glad you're here tonight. This is the kind of the sad, it's a weird, bittersweet feeling, like at the end of the semester, part of the challenge of teaching is you always know what you didn't get a chance to cover, right? So I'm feeling that feeling like, oh, if only we had more time. But of course, I do look back and think how much ground we have covered and what great conversations we've had. And so I'm pretty happy with how it's gone. So let's take a look at what's on tap for tonight. This really is a kind of synthesis class. And so we're going to kind of use it as a little bit of a opportunity for some reflection and some questions, and then we'll be done. So it's a kind of tradition. It's a kind of tradition for me to create a visual synthesis. And so I have done that, like I've done every year since I was a very young teacher. In the olden days, my visual synthesis would be something I would draw on the blackboard. And this is just an extension of that technique. So if you scroll down the page, hopefully you're scrolling down the page, and perhaps you will want to open this image in a new tab. Let's see what happens when we do that. Open the image. Oh, tiny. Hold on here. I want to open it in a new tab. I'll make it as big as possible. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my paper copy there. Okay. So it's really crazy to try to put down on one single sheet of paper like the most important ideas and activities of the semester, but I gave it a try. Now, your job is I created this piece of paper representing the semester. Your job is to read it and interpret it. Is there something on this piece of paper that jogs your memory, or that you think you understand what I'm trying to communicate as I capture some experiences of the semester? So we just go around the room, and if you see something that you can comment on or remember, you'll kind of explain it to us. Who wants to go first? Jamie.
All right, so what I notice is right away is the heart in the center, and it makes me think about, we've been talking about the head, heart, and spirit of the person, and that really connects to me, I guess, and stood out.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really a nice way to kick us off. Who's next? You guys are studying, right? You're studying.
I've got one, Renee.
Oh, great.
For me, the real, the Leap One Burst Your Bubble podcast, that was like getting on the roller coaster of digital authorship. And it just opened up like a whole new world to me about what was possible. So as I look at this, obviously all of these are familiar and I have a memory from each one, but to me that's especially memorable because that's how it all began.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Who's got another memory? What part?
Sherry does.
Yeah, Sherry.
For me, it's the Leap 3, the storytelling. That was the one that impacted me the most, and it also made me realize what I was asking kids to do. It really brought home that whole thing of what I was like asking them to do, because I've never done this myself. And it was so emotional for me and so eye-opening. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm asking these kids to do. And it feels so personal. So that leap 3 really was the one for me that really made me envision what I was asking of the actual students to do when they're telling me stories, because I'd never really realized just how much I was asking of them, to share themselves with me.
Nicely put. Thanks for sharing. Who's next? Barbara.
Yeah, what caught my eye was the creative process. Preparation, incubation, illumination, verification. We create all the time, but to break it down into those pieces, preparation, incubation, think, illumination, an idea, and then really putting it together. I just like that because when you really get into complex creative projects or processes, you need to really break it down in order to make it work.
Yeah, so true. One of the things I've been finding out about myself is I've been thinking a lot about the incubation process, because I tend to be like a Speedy Gonzalez. I'm very impulsive, and when I'm in the zone of creating, I can sustain my attention for a long period of time, and I can really go to town. And it isn't actually until I step away from the project and stop thinking about it for a while that something happens. Like when I walk on the beach, or when I go out to a restaurant, or when I just am not involved in the project. When I come back to the project, somehow I'm thinking differently about it. And I almost always have some kind of illumination, some aha. So I don't know how after all these years I keep forgetting like that it's okay to stop working on it, and that stopping working on it can actually help. That's really, for an overachiever like me, that is a hard lesson to learn.
I would say that the same is true of me. Not that I jump in and work too much, but I know I need to let it mull for a while. So I try to start things early and let them simmer a little here, a little there, until I'm really got some meat before I'm ready to work.
It's a good creative practice. All right, Denise, I see your hand is raised. What part of this drawing can you relate to?
I have 2 pieces that I liked. One, the collaboration. I think that as a librarian in 2 different schools by myself all the time, I think the collaboration piece is an important thing to remember, that we're not alone. There are other librarians out there that are willing to work with us, and 2 heads are always better than 1. I think that's why I always worked with my twin sister, and we did everything together because we both were able to bounce ideas off of each other. So that was a big one. And then the second one that stuck out at me was representation, the creator, audience, subject, ethics, and how we all see things differently, and what we might think is good, somebody else might take it offensively. So we just have to try to look at it through many different lenses instead of just our own.
Wonderful insight there. That is the paradox, isn't it? Angie, I see your hand is raised. What part of this drawing can you relate to?
I was looking at the hashtags for Parkland and just thinking about like how it felt like we were really participating in something that as things happened, they were immediately relevant to what we were doing, like with the Facebook. And I feel like a lot of times when I've been in academia, I'm inside of a bubble, and we only get the opportunity to read things that are already published and already a couple of years old. And it's nice to make connections to what's around me right now.
Yeah, it was kind of, I've been thinking a lot about that, Angie. I feel like this semester, it seemed like as we were talking about youth voice and civic engagement and kids being authors, we were seeing kids take on that leadership role and become authors and tell their story. And I don't know that, I think as it was happening, it was kind of hard to even make sense of it. But now reflecting back on it, I think, this was a pretty important kind of conflation of the way ideas came together. We saw them enacted, on the world stage. We saw how much ambivalence there is about youth voice, right? How much suspicion there is, how much distrust of it there is. And I think that was a hard thing to see play out in relation to kind of what our readings suggested was a more optimistic, an optimistic and hopeful thing. But I leave the end of the semester feeling pretty optimistic and hopeful nonetheless. What parts of this drawing can you relate to? Pat?
What struck me about the drawing when I saw it earlier was everything is connected to everything else. Like we say, everybody learns from everything else. Like you really can't do one part without another part and another part. And like you can't even do one thing without it all connecting to everything. Which is life, but also this class.
In life and also this class. And you know what my problem was as the designer? I wanted to put some things closer together. And then I realized I couldn't put everything equally close together to show that they were related. And so it's truthfully, I think identity is related to a lot of things that are on the other side of that chart, but I couldn't put everything together. But yeah, I'm really glad you see part of why it's such a hot mess is that these things are all connected, right? So yeah, I'm glad you're reading that part of the chart. Matt, what do you notice and see? What does this synthesis of the class mean to you?
So similar to what Pat said, I took where they have these kind of ribbons coming from the heart and the center: civic engagement, creative process, transformativeness. And I kind of looked almost like it was all draining into the center. It's all connected. It all funnels into one location. And something else that stuck out to me, like a few people said, was Leap 3 in storytelling. And I like that it's nearly touching reflect, because that for me, that assignment took a lot of personal reflection. So that kind of really sticks out to me.
Ah, what a beautiful, so you're actually reading the design, right? Elements.
Yeah.
Like you said, you used the term ribbons as kind of feeding into the practice.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting, truthfully, you know what I really did? I was trying to use it to break up the page. But I like your interpretation better.
Happy accidents.
Happy accident. And I think Leap 3 definitely is about reflection. So that definitely captured a lot there. Adam, I see your hand is raised. What comments do you have on interpreting this reflection, this chart, this visual synthesis?
I was drawn to the little piece in the kind of bottom left corner, expanding literacy. And that ties in. I was just before this class, I was watching The Daily Show, just catching up on the one from last night, and Trevor Noah said something that struck me. It was about kind of more like society in general, but he was saying how societal values and morals, just like a cell phone, every so often you need to upgrade to the next model. Things will become obsolete, and I think that definitely applies to literacy and the idea that literacy and just the whole scope and sequence of what that really is needs to continually be expanded on and more all-encompassing, and taking in new facets of how we communicate, how we read, how we interact, how we discuss, how we tell stories, how we share everything needs to always be in check and be willing to change, and our baseline of how we understand what literacy is also needs to upgrade every, faster and faster, I think. Or maybe always should have been upgrading faster. It's just, I think that seems like that's more coming to a realization now than it has been.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I actually think it's worth for your project reflecting on your use of the word upgrade too, because it is such a great, it's a metaphor, right? When it comes to thinking about literacy in relation to upgrade, but it's a damn interesting metaphor in relation to literacy. And I wonder what happens when you push that metaphor a little bit. It's really cool. So all semester we've been trying to thinking about digital authorship in relation to expanding the concept of literacy. This whole course is part of that larger enterprise, not just writing, but also reading. Other parts of this drawing that make sense to you or that you want to comment on?
I find it interesting that identity is bracketed by only performance and construction. I like that it's a completely produced element of yourself. I wonder if there's any natural piece to that could be worked in. Is there such thing as a natural identity? I don't know. Because performance and construction, kind of to me signifies that you are completely in control of the identity you create, when sometimes I'm sure that the minute you leave the room, people have an idea about you that you weren't even sure that you were projecting.
So you're inviting us to think about identity in relation to nature and nurture. I wanted to move your eye between identity and down there at the bottom to context, right? Because the many vernacular contexts where digital authorship occurs. Remember when we looked at those two weirdo YouTube videos with the children kind of playing with video and just like as if they were playing with dolls. They were playing with dolls and they were playing with video. And I started thinking about how the kids aren't aware of how that practice is building their identity as digital authors. The parents aren't aware of it, the kids aren't aware of it, but it's happening, right? It's building their confidence and their authority as people who can document things through audiovisual media. And so I kind of wanted to keep them parallel so that they had that communication. So we've kind of done a good visual synthesis, I think, with that piece. Let me ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll move on. Let me see if I can move my way out of this piece. Of course, for me, the discipline of trying to grasp the whole syllabus on one page is a lot about what to leave out. And so I did want to reflect on a few of my memories about stuff that you did that I was especially intrigued with. And I posted some links there to these things. You all did a research activity where I asked you to go search for relevant source material on connecting digital literacy to civic engagement. And as I went back and looked at that, really interesting, there's like 18 really interesting resources that you chose. Part of me thought, okay, well, we didn't really put a big emphasis on accessing, right? I didn't ever do my famous demonstration on, research skills and finding information. So I'm feeling kind of sad about, you analyzed, you accessed, but we only did really one cool activity with that. Your work on digital annotation was so simply marvelous that I remember at the time I even said to you guys how this was perhaps the best example of digital annotation I ever saw ever. And I might want to write more about what happened here. This is just one of the documents. As you remember, there were several of these. They were all equally amazing. But somehow as a community, you came together as a group of readers and writers in this, using this digital annotation tool. And I'm not sure why it was so successful, but it was so successful. And that was something I want to reflect more on. Why did that work so well? I really loved how you created these infographics on representational ethics. Do you remember your infographics? I thought those were just wonderful. And I guess in the spirit of me doing a visual synthesis, when you guys did these infographics, you were doing a kind of visual synthesis. And so I want to think more about the power of drawing and images as a tool for synthesis, because I don't know, I think the quality of the synthesis was really high there. And maybe because you had to create it using images or design, I don't know, maybe that supported making connections between ideas. So throughout the semester, on occasions, you would have to make a Flipgrid commentary. You had complicated, ambivalent attitudes about doing this because of the way it is a performance. But the one that I liked best was your reflections on our readings about collaboration and about the power of collaboration to scaffold and to support the creative process. So those were some of my memories from spring 2018 as it relates to the digital platforms and tools that you used. As you reflect back on the course, are there any particular memories having to do with digital tools, platforms, or technologies that you want to comment on, remember? Angie.
For me, Twitter has become like a new tool. I mean, I had a Twitter account for a while, and I was using it like all my other social media platforms, just to like a self-promotion kind of thing, which Adam's probably writing about. And I started actually when we were at the Digital Institute, I started using it as note-taking. And just anytime like name dropping happened, or like a tool I wanted to look up later, I would start following it, and then I could go back when I had more time and reflect and see if I wanted to go any further into those things. And then just thinking about also like my identity and my kind of like split identity among all these platforms, and Twitter is the place where I'm starting to pull it all together right now.
Thanks for sharing. Any other tools or platforms or technologies that were meaningful to you this semester? Or not meaningful to you this semester? So here's my shout out to Tim Stewart. Tim's not on the call right now, but he's been a really important member of the class, and I've really learned from you, Tim, since I suspect you are watching this or will be watching this. So when Mark Zuckerberg got called before Congress and the whole brouhaha blew up, you said in a very public way, I don't want to use Facebook anymore for this class. And of course, at that moment, I was feeling a little ambivalent as well, even though I don't intend on giving up Facebook. It is an important form of social media for me. There are many things about it I really like, and including the opportunity to have academic conversation. But it made me realize a lot how largely how I largely push to the side the political economy of Facebook and the way in which my data is sold, and my own lack of knowledge about how the algorithms work. And I am a media studies professor, right? So I feel like I think Tim's invitation for us to stop using Facebook right as the testimony was happening was actually kind of a good opportunity for me to reflect on, if I use Facebook again, I will want to probably wrap around it a little bit about the political economy of it. So today I tweeted, I found in the New York Times, every single user of Facebook pays or makes for Facebook $84 a year, right? $84. And I started thinking about, well, that's the value of my attention on Facebook, right? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to see if I can work in, if I can, I might be able to use Facebook for education if I can wrap around it a lesson on its political economy and maybe on its regulation. We'll see. So thank you, Tim, for making me think in a different way about the pros and cons of that tool. Adam.
This is like kind of related to what you said. I just want to, I guess, bring people's attention to it in yours. I haven't listened yet, but on my way to work this morning, I heard the preview for Tom Ashbrook today, or On Point on NPR, had a discussion about how like the algorithms for a site like Facebook are actually the things that are setting trends more than, say, like a fashion trend or like a personal thing, like, oh, this is being started because so-and-so is wearing it and it was in a magazine or something. Whereas actually these algorithms are choosing for us what might be trendy to us. You know, it's like selling back different things to ourselves that is being reflected based on what we say and do.
Fascinating.
And actually, I was noticing that even more recently in terms of how much Facebook itself, based on my own interest, how much are actively selling very specific things, like extremely specific. Like items will come up that are just like a very specific sweatshirt from LL Bean or something, just is on right there.
Yep. That micro targeting has real consequences for how we think about shared culture. And you can see a lot of reflection on, you know, the implications of that. This weekend in the New York Times was a really great essay by Zeynep Tufekci on basically saying, you know, it's almost like a backlash against personalized learning in a way. Basically she said something like, when stuff is too personalized, then we lack the capacity to be part of a community and you know, be part of a shared group, and too much personalization actually distorts our thinking about a lot of things. And I just feel like that was really fascinating to me. So I'm glad you're thinking about it. Okay, so let's just see if I want to say anything else about that. Okay, I think you can see my screen now. I've been thinking a lot about the kinds of tools used in this class, and whether or not the next time I teach this class, should I use a content management system? And so let's before we talk about the project, let's just do, while we're on this theme of reflecting, here are the 3 questions. So we've been talking about the digital tools that you used and which ones were meaningful to you or not. Which concepts will be most memorable to you and why? How might they be useful to you? And then basically, this is the main thing I want you to tell me. How can I make this class better? what should the class explore? What could the class explore for this class to be more relevant to you, more meaningful to you, to better meet your needs? That would be really helpful to me because I'll be going on sabbatical in the fall, coming back and teaching it in 2019. Give me something to think about.
Can I just come out and ask, like, whenever a professor goes on sabbatical, does that mean you're going to actively research something like in depth? Can I ask what you're researching?
I'm writing a book on propaganda.
Oh.
I'm going to be in Croatia and Florence. So, but yes, I'm going to finish with the book on propaganda. It'll be done by the end of the year.
Oh, cool.
Actually, it'll be a book on propaganda education, to be more precise. Right? It'll be about teaching about propaganda. Yeah. Yeah. But then I'm going to have to come back and teach digital authorship to mid-career, mostly K-12 teachers and librarians like yourselves. How do I make this course better next time for the teachers and librarians who come along behind you?
So I have one idea. I felt like a lot of this was very valuable for me personally to reflect on my understanding of the world and media. And I thought the personal narrative was interesting. I think because I teach such young students, K-3, I think having varied sources about how to do digital authorship with a range of student ages, and I imagine it's very hard because the class really addresses K-20, so that's a complicated, or I guess K-16 levels. But yeah, I think I'm still thinking about, well, how do I translate so much of what I hear? How do I translate it into what's going to be effective for working with young learners?
That's something I could do better to make that connection clear and to give you resources that support that journey. Thank you for sharing. I very much appreciate that. Barbara.
I would say the same thing. I'm a K-5, and some of the stuff I just, don't really know how to apply it. But I really liked that we were exposed to a lot of things, just for me personally, things that I wouldn't do otherwise. Blogging, not likely. Twitter, not likely. Okay, maybe an infographic or a screencast now and then, but Padlet, yes. But other things, I think it was a lot. But it was good. I can't say I really feel like a master in any of them really, but you have to start somewhere. So I think it was really good to get your face out there. Some parts were more fun than others. I loved the storytelling.
Clearly.
But not everybody does. So
right. Not everybody does. But it's a good point that maybe some opportunity for you to specialize in how this concept applies to your grade band would make it more relevant. I'm very, very appreciative of that feedback. What other ways can I make this course better next time? All right, well, you'll think a little bit about that, I hope, and maybe if you have some ideas, you'll send me some feedback. Here's one of the things that I need you to do. The University of Rhode Island expects that you will complete the end of semester course evaluation link to provide feedback to me and to the officials at the University of Rhode Island on the quality of the learning experience. If you click on this link, you have to fill in your URI, username, and password, and survey takes about 10 or 15 minutes to complete. Okay, so let's see. That leaves only left expectations for creative projects, curriculum projects due May 7th. Last week we had this really interesting conversation where you noticed I pointed out to you that the final project does not have, unlike all the other assignments that you've done for me, it does not have a criteria for evaluation, right? Although I do give you some examples of some outstanding work done by students in previous semesters, including their work, their paper, their work, and their pichakacha, right? So you can see both examples, right, from a bunch of different kinds of work. One of the reasons why there isn't a criteria for evaluation is that in the true project-based learning, evaluation and assessment will be personalized. It'll be individualized to meet where your project is. And at this point, you've now given me some clear evidence that you have a plan, right? So if you deliver something that's way different from your plan, I'll have something to say about that, right? And that can happen in the creative process. That can happen. So it's not the end of the world if it does, right? But in general, I think you're forming some expectations about what the project will involve that you've communicated pretty well in your scope of work. I'm using that document to shape my own expectations about what's reasonable for you to accomplish in the next few weeks ahead. And I guess in some ways, that's why this piece is kind of something I wanted to underline. I wasn't sure that I could see in the scope of work that not everybody included this piece. So I want to call your attention to it. You know, if you're writing like it, so with all this freedom, right, that you have for your project, you got to do something doable, right? So again, if your project gets smaller in the next 2 weeks, that's okay. It's always better to do something small and jewel-like than to try to eat the elephant all in one bite, right? So feel free to like jettison parts of your plan in order to make the part you do beautiful, right? Now, oh, sorry, what did I do there? So if you write a research paper, there's a few of you writing a research paper, that's a big lift, right? So, but if you're doing a curriculum project or a creative project, that's also a big lift. But in order for me to make sense of that work, I need to have another document, right? I need to have a framework that allows me to make sense of that document. So it says here, if you choose to develop a curriculum or creative project, you'll submit both that creative project and a short paper that describes your strategy, goals, and work processes. I'm imagining this is kind of like a blog post, right? Blog post length, 500, 700 words, could even be 400 words, could be longer. But that short paper or blog post allows me to understand how you are making your choices with your creative project, right? And that's kind of an important secondary document that helps me evaluate your work based on what your goals were. So I just want to make sure to see if you guys have any questions about that. Adam.
If we're doing a like a paper, like I planned on having like a lengthy, like 18 to 20 page paper as involving scholarly research and other things that I've done. I want to have it all in one document. You don't have to then do that second reflective paper, right? That's all. It's just enough to do that, right?
Correct. If you're doing a piece of creative writing or journalistic writing, then you need that secondary paper. But if you're doing an academic piece of academic scholarship and it has an abstract and keywords and a lit review and a main body and references, if that's an academic paper, then you should be able to explain all the context in that paper, right?
Okay, but
you need an extra document. You got lots of room there to explain everything.
okay, but if it's like just like a essay,
If it's an essay,
well, no, let's say it was like an essay for like an article,
right? Then you need that secondary document that helps me understand a little bit about your strategy, why you picked this target audience, why you picked this form. So if you go in a more creative / artistic way than an academic way, then that other document helps me see the strategy behind your choices, right? It lets you tell me what your strategy was.
Okay.
I hope that's clear. Barbara.
So I would post my curriculum and my little write-up
Yep.
together
Yes.
on
your blog page.
Okay.
Exactly. Matt.
Hey, so I'm doing the digital lesson. Should I, in your opinion, create like a formal lesson plan, or because in my mind I kind of was going to create like a Google Doc that I would give to the students, and then just create all of the materials that I would give to them, share with.
Creating the materials that you are going to use in your curriculum is curriculum writing. So, yes.
All right, I wasn't sure if like a formal plan of like all of the standards going to hit. I'm going to put that in my explanation.
Yeah, maybe, because think about it this way: for me to evaluate the quality of those assignments or activities or readings or whatever you're going to do, I kind of need to know a little bit about your strategy.
And that's where I was going to put that there, just to kind of say like I'm doing everything for a purpose.
Good.
All right.
And are links to all your different documents on one page good? Like rather than having page after page of your documents, links to your documents that work?
Yeah, I shared that example from last semester from what's his name? He did a
because that's what I'm basing it off of his.
Yeah. I actually thought that from a practical point of view, Dan Riley's that's his Pachakacha, sorry. The Pachakacha was good too, but the curriculum basically was all his resources for teaching this class.
Good, because that's what I'm basing it off of. I'm going off of his and doing it just like that with mine and putting all the links, so that works.
What's really interesting is that in a lot of ways, this is a lot of work, but boy, what a payoff, because now he's teaching with this, right? So, this is the kind of work that makes your whole job easier once you've gone through the discipline of it, right? And so
then at the bottom of that, I even put a documents in Google resources and put links to all of those at the bottom of that as well.
Superb. Now, I think if we went to his website, we would see that he wrote a little, like a framing document that says, I teach in this kind of school with these kind of kids. I've charged with this kind of task. So on his blog is even a more broad contextual framing, right, of his high school context, right? Because this doesn't have that in so much detail, but it's a really short document that simply kind of justifies why this was the right strategy for him. So if you choose that strategy, that's cool. And you can use another format. Don't feel like that's the format you have to use. Barbara, you and I, or somebody here, we were talking about like, if you're writing a curriculum, use the format that makes sense to you, that fits with your community expectations and your context, or will allow you to, have the biggest impact that you can. What other questions do you have? Okay, so yeah. Adam.
Quick one. On that, when you say a short, let me just quote your words really quick. You say complete a project in a short paper that describes your strategy, goals, and work processes. What's
Yep.
like your definition of short?
So I was saying a few minutes ago that if it were 400 words or 500 words, that's about a typical blog post,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that's 2 pages, double spaced.
Yeah.
So that would be typical. It could be shorter and it could be longer, but that would be, in my experience, that would give you the room to explain your strategy, goals, and work processes.
Okay, no, that's good.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you.
And strategy being the big thing there. Cool. All right. So now you guys, if as you're working over the next, I guess you have about 2 more weeks, right? You might want feedback, or you might just have a question. Use Twitter to capture my attention immediately. Right? Because that will do it. Right? Barbara.
Just a quick question on the Pachakacha. We don't have to have our face in there, right? It's just like the screencast.
Correct. With your voice.
Okay.
The slides and your voice. Slides with your voice.
Slides with my voice. I got it. Thank you.
Good question. I bet a bunch of people were wondering about that. Now, if you wanted to put your face in a little tiny corner of the screen, you could. But actually, that will probably take away from the image quality. And when we study the genre of Pachakacha, we know it's the design of your images that are doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Okay, so I think you guys have got all of the questions done. And so now it's time for us to say goodbye. So we're going to say goodbye with the spirit of growth that the spring semester brings. It's been raining and raining and raining, and yet we know spring is coming and things are going to be growing. And you've chosen to invest. You've chosen to invest in yourself by developing your knowledge and expertise by taking this graduate course. That's a great investment and will pay off for your whole lifetime. But it is like about growing, right? So in the spirit of we're all growing, and that's what learning is, we're going to use the goodbye that starts with the little seedlings. The little seedlings start to grow and grow and grow. And then they grow and they grow and they grow and they grow and they grow. Okay, so you got the concept, right? So get your fingers in the right place so they can be the grass. Come on now. Come on, Matt. He's like, what the fuck? This is weird. All right, ready? We're going to say goodbye. We're waving goodbye with our little grass. Goodbye. Goodbye. I'll see you guys at the Summer Institute. Don't forget that you have to register before June 30th if you want the early bird rate. If Kara told me if I didn't tell her that, if I didn't tell you guys that, she would kill me. So, goodbye. See you in July.